So you and I took a big step this year in that we decided to pay for education.
Yep.
And we've spent between masterminds, RIAs, coaching, close to 50 grand this year. So you just got off a Zoom with 60 people in North Carolina, mostly new investors. What would you say are the advantages of paying for education? What are the advantages of skipping to the front of the line or paying to condense time, or the availability of a large network when you're in a jam or you're stuck, to be able to reach out to those people?
It's everything you just said. Just as Michael Jordan has a coach or Tiger Woods has a swing coach, everybody needs a coach at something in life to figure out how to get to the next step or figure out how to take that first step. Fortunately, if you're in the world of real estate investing, there are local communities like the North Carolina Real Estate Investors Association that you can join for a nominal amount of money, and you get basically a year-long education on various topics, from how to get started in real estate investing to how to protect your assets as you grow your portfolio. So I think a lot of people, maybe start by doing a simple Google search online and going to social media platforms that are centered around real estate investing, like Bigger Pockets or Connected Investors, which are all great resources. And there's just a ton of resources out there nowadays. But I do encourage everybody to find that local group that you can have, that's your local support system of like-minded individuals like yourself, people that you're in a room with where you're not the smartest person in the room, you're there to be a sponge, and really truly network. Because if you just show up to these things like the Zoom I just hosted, or show up to an event once every blue moon, you're not going to get what you need out of it. You need to show up and ask questions, make an effort to shake hands, and speak to maybe 5 new people every time you attend these. So there is a wealth of information. I will say that I would also caution people as to quote unquote gurus out there that'll sell you a course for an extreme amount of money. And while that can be helpful, I don't think that's aimed for new investors. For you and I, as somewhat newer members to the Boardroom Mastermind, for example, it was imperative that we brought on coaches and gained networks of people that had been there before us and could give us the feedback on our company, give us the feedback on our investment strategies. So I think coaching is worth its weight in gold and just invaluable.
I think a lot of people get stuck in the research phase.
Absolutely.
Right? They want to take the leap. They spend copious amounts of hours in front of their computer trying to research, okay, what do I do in this scenario? And they almost talk themselves out of it. Mm-hmm. So one thing that we've learned in these masterminds or paying for our education is taking action, right? So if you're a brand new investor right now, you're looking to get in your opinion, what's the best approach for them to take action? Is it going to YouTube and seeing what type of content they can watch and digest for free? Is it going to a local RIA for a couple of $100 a year? Or you're talking about, trying to avoid gurus that maybe aren't invested in that one particular person. It's more of a money grab for them.
100%.
So you do a lot of coaching and a lot of consulting for our clients. And I think that there's a huge advantage of, if you're going to try and find a coach or a mentor, why not somebody that's invested in you? And obviously, if we're financing the deal, we're in the business of lending money, financing these fix and flip or DSCR projects. So what are the advantages of partnering or your coach also being your lender?
Yeah, and as a lot of people get started out, you need money to start out investing. So if you take that initial seed money and hand it to somebody you'll never actually meet or speak to for $10,000, now you're back at square one of having to raise capital to actually get into your first deal. So what I would encourage people to do is for a nominal amount of money, whether it's the North Carolina RIA or maybe you're in Florida or wherever you are, find your local metropolitan that has a real estate event, spend that money and see what you're getting out of that. I would also encourage YouTube, but everybody knows YouTube University is not necessarily giving you the best advice. But you can't consume too much. Now you can in the sense of what you're pointing out of, there is paralysis by analysis. So you always need to understand that action needs to be taken. Even bad action is better than no action at times. Now you don't want to get yourself into a situation of a foreclosure, let's say in your first fix and flip, but nonetheless partnering with a lender like CapSource or finding somebody that's a coach, mentor that also provides other services like actually giving you the capital you need to invest, is invaluable. And for us, our mindset is I'm not here to hand somebody rates and terms and get my commission when the loan closes. I'm in it for a lifetime value of that client because their success is our success. If they're not making money, they're not going to come back and do more loans. So leverage everybody you can, leverage their network, leverage their knowledge. You don't have to know everything. You just have to know the people that know everything. Your network is your net worth. So getting in the rooms and networking with people, to me, I don't care what that room is, if it's 4 people at a bar that meet to speak about commercial investing every Monday, or it's 50 people in a Zoom meeting that are listening to me speak, or other members, other vendors in that RIA speak. It's all valuable. Just don't get into the paralysis by analysis. Understand that action needs to be taken, and don't get whiplash. If you're focused on fix and flip, don't all of a sudden look at wholesaling. Don't all of a sudden look at, it's fine to have an understanding of all that, but master one thing until you sort of know how to swim in the shallow end before you start deep diving in the deep end.
And if you want to try to condense it, so you and I are heavy in a lot of the forums. And one thing that I've noticed is a lot of people looking for, okay, I need a go-to title company. How do I source deeply discounted or off-market deals? Who do I know that can finance this project? So they're kind of piecing everything together. And the advantage of the RIAs, real estate investing associations, they're in every market, and every major piece that you need is typically in one spot. Yep. So you can go to a RIA and find multiple lending sources, and we can talk about why investors should be reaching out to every capital partner out there in a little bit, but your title companies are in those rooms. Investors that are doing what you want to do are already in those rooms. So if you're in multifamily, I guarantee you there's at least one multifamily investor in there. If you're doing single family fix and flips, there's somebody in there doing that. So if you're trying to condense the research process, for lack of a better term, the RIAs are a great place to start, and they're relatively inexpensive.
Yeah, all your resources are in one building. And we're a big believer, and you have been doing this for years, of coaching people on how to build out your team. Do you have an investor-friendly real estate agent? Do you have an investor-friendly title company? How many lenders do you have? Do you have a hard money lender? Do you have a broker? Do you have a private lender? Having all of those tools in your tool belt is, it's paramount to your success in being able to walk into a building for $150 a year, getting access for 12 months, and having all the resources in that building. If you're not doing that, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Right.
And you can't, it's easier to vet people face to face and hear testimonials of other people in that room about the companies you're wanting to potentially work with than it is by going to, again, YouTube or any of these other platforms where it's just not a personal, relationship you're having, and maybe you're reading Google reviews or something that's not really somebody that's been there, done that, been in the trenches that can say, yes, this person performs, yes, they're good at what they do. And this is a very serious business in the sense that people are taking their capital that they might have been saving for a decade. Maybe they're a single mother with 2 kids, and on the side they've been putting a little bit money for over 10 years. And if you don't have the team you can trust and is knowledgeable and knows how to get you through a transaction and be successful, you're taking that 10 years of hard work, that money that you want to build generational wealth with, and putting it in the hands of the people that you, vetted via YouTube.
Right.
That's just not a good business model.
Yeah, and then we know there's 2 types of people that go into these meetups. You have the guy that you see every single month. You know his face. You maybe don't know his name. He's never approached you about a deal. He's never asked you to price anything out. You don't really see him networking with anybody else. And then on the flip side, you see somebody who's shaking everybody's hand.
Yep.
They're asking a million questions. So they have two different paths that they're going down, and it comes back to taking action. So what's the difference between the guy who's going to show up every month, listen to what everybody has to say, maybe even digest some of the information, but doesn't act on it, versus the guy, and we both know, an individual that we could probably think of right now that goes to every meetup, probably half the age of most of the investors in those meetups, and has probably done, a half a dozen flips this year because they take action.
Exactly. So there's plenty of examples that we have worked with people. I know a young woman that travels from Georgia to attend 5 different chapters across 5 different metropolitans at the North Carolina RIA. And obviously that's expensive, time consuming, but that's somebody that's taking this very serious. Real estate investing is a full-time job. So if you're just showing up to show up, it's no different than anything else in life. If you're showing up at work and you're just punching in and punching out, are you really going to move up the corporate ladder? Are you really going to master what you're doing? Probably not. There's no sense in hiring a coach or taking the time out if you're not going to take it seriously. And to the point of, as you talk to people, joint venturing is probably the fastest means to grow a portfolio within real estate investing. And as you say all the time, you can let them know, partnerships equal
Partnerships equal rocket ships. Yeah.
So if you really want to scale quickly, meet those people. Maybe you have the capital and they have the good credit. Maybe they have they're a general contractor but no capital, and you have the capital but no rehab experience.
Or just a different asset class. We know guys that are heavy in self-storage that are always looking for partners, whether it be capital partners or somebody that's also familiar with that particular asset class. But if you're wanting to get into something and you don't know everything, why not bring something to the table? Maybe it is cash, and leverage their knowledge to learn the process. How do you stabilize a self-storage facility? How do you package it and then eventually sell that to somebody on the secondary market? You're not going to have all of those answers, and you might not ever find it researching on
online,
YouTube,
yeah.
Right? So I think going back to your point, JVing with somebody, and all of those investors are in those meetups.
Yeah, and if they're not, somebody in that meetup knows somebody. So it's just ask the right questions, put yourself in the room, and put yourself in the conversation. I'm an introverted person, but I force myself to go into these events because I learn something new every day. And my mantra is twofold. Number one, I go into these events and say, what is one thing that I can leave here with that I can put into action immediately? Mm-hmm. Just one gem. That's all I need. And if I compound those over time, because I'm attending so many events, at the end of the year maybe I'm attending an event a week, I have 52 things that I can institute. And 52 pieces of value that I can now pass along to somebody else. I'm a big believer in, if you bring value to people, you'll get what you want. That value will come back to you. So if I can impart my value, if we can at CapSource impart our value upon anybody that needs to get started in this industry, take 15 minutes of my time. I'm happy to give that to you if you're serious about this, because I know I'll give you the clarity you need to get started. That's one thing people need sometimes, is you have 50, 100 ideas. And I had a young guy from the NC RIA again, gave me a call and said, hey, I talked to my mentor. My mentor told me, because of where rates are right now, I shouldn't be fixing and flipping. And I said, oh, well, that's a universal statement that should not apply to everything.
It's a negative mindset.
First of all, 100%. It's setting a negative mindset. It's setting this negative mindset between your ears of, maybe I can't clear that hurdle. It's discouraging. You never want to discourage somebody that's really on the edge of taking that leap to really get themselves a passive income to pull their family out of poverty or build generational wealth. And what I told him is, every deal is going to tell you whether you should fix and flip or not. Is it a more risky time than it was a year ago? Absolutely. But if I'm buying a deal at 50% on the dollar and it's a lipstick rehab, why would I tell myself I'm not going to do that fix and flip when the risk is so low? That's silly. So it's really a case-by-case basis. And the reason I bring that example up is, at the end of the call, he quite literally said, you gave me the clarity. So that's what people need sometimes, is speak to a coach that can put things together. If I'm, again, going back to like a sports analogy, I may know how to hold a golf club, or I know where my grip needs to be. But if I don't put it all together, or the coach doesn't put it all together in my swing, knowing all the parts doesn't matter if I can't put it into the sum of the whole. So it's just really important for people to get yourself in the room, be in the right conversation, and honestly, if somebody's giving you that negative feedback, cut them out.
Right.
You don't want to be around somebody that's going to do that. Show me your friends, I'll show you your future. There's a reason people say that. There's a reason why we leveled up by trying to get into these rooms, because I want to be in the room with a person that's not running a 7-figure business, but beyond that.
Right.
Their goal is to be a billionaire, and they're not far off, because I can learn so much from that.
And a lot of the investors that we're talking to, they're newer. They didn't go through 2008. But the ones that did know what to do, they wouldn't have the mindset of the guru that you're talking about. The other saying that we use a lot is smooth waters don't make for good sailors. So if you're only sailing in smooth waters, you're never going to know what to do when that big wave comes, or when you're facing adversity. So I want to go a little bit deeper into coaching or mentoring with your capital partner, because I think that's a huge advantage. And one thing that we do at CapSource that you and I both know that separates us from everybody else is that we take the additional time to coach our clients. We offer consulting. We also source them off-market inventory. So if I'm a new investor and I'm coming to work with Mark at CapSource, the advantage that I have in paying you to mentor or coach me is that, number one, you're going to bring me deals that make sense. Why? Because you're willing to take the risk of financing it for me. More importantly, you know all of the underwriting guidelines. So if I hire, Jimmy Lipper, the guru off the street, and he doesn't work with CapSource, and maybe he's only done, let's just say, 100 deals, he's going to give you feedback based off of what he knows. Whereas you've done thousands of transactions. You know where in the loan process a deal is going to get stuck or not get stuck. You know how to upfront say, yes, this is a home run, or you know what, this maybe isn't the best investment. You and I are not in the business of just saying, here's your leverage, here's your interest rate, do you want to do it? So if you're a new investor and you're looking for coaching or mentoring, I'm not saying that there aren't good gurus out there, but if you're not buying your deals all cash, why not leverage your finance partner?
Yeah, absolutely. And here the reality is when you're going through real estate investing, you're not buying 3-2 cookie cutter light cosmetic deals every time.
You take what comes your way.
Whatever's come, and there's unique deals. We've been in this business a while. We've originated a lot of loans, and at the end of the day, we still see new stuff all the time. So as you're talking to lenders or talking to brokers, and really for the lenders, do you want to be handcuffed to their guidelines? Because we've seen it just this week. We saw a federal interest rate hike just yesterday of 0.25%. We saw one of the largest hard money lenders in our space that is basically clearing their balance sheet and taking on no new business. And we're talking about a business that's originating $3 billion in loans a year. So all of those investors that were saying, listen, my lender's great, I don't need anybody else, and now are floating out there saying, what am I doing with my deals? How is this affecting my business? So for us, we pride ourselves on having multiple channels available, because every deal will not fit everybody's lending box. And not to disparage anybody else, but as you're talking to lenders, do you want to talk to somebody that's an actual investor, or do you want to talk to a 22-year-old kid out of college, never owned a piece of real estate, that's reading just rates and terms off a piece of paper to you? And a good example of this, and you indicated, we're underwriters just as much as we're loan originators or coaches or all of that. So when it comes to doing deals, for instance, a lot of people nowadays acquire deals from wholesalers. So what is probably unknown to a lot of investors that utilize hard money is most lenders are going to have caps or not lend at all on that assignment fee on a wholesale transaction.
Right.
So if they're unaware or not asking you, hey, are you acquiring this from a wholesaler on day one, you might find out on day 21, when you're 24 hours from clear to close, that now you have to bring that assignment fee to closing because your lender won't cover that. So it's my job to know that. An investor can't possibly store underwriting guidelines of an entire industry in their head, but CapSource can. That's our knowledge, that's our bread and butter, that's what I'm here for. So allow us to assess your deal, allow us to assess the comps, your strategy, what's your exit strategy, allow us to hold you accountable by saying, hey, Joe Smith that we just closed on this rehab loan. I know you said you'd be out in 30 days. I'm giving you a call. This is day 30. Where are you at? Not to push somebody and say, pay me back, but it's to say, are you needing help?
Right.
Did you have any issues with your contractors? Did you open up the walls and find out there's something more that needed to be done? I'm, again, in the success business. I want you to be profitable. I want you to come back. I want you to gain knowledge. It's going to make it infinitely easier for us and our team to do the next deal for you. It's going to make you more efficient at finding the next deal. So it's a relationship that is a long-lasting relationship, and you need to start forming those today, especially as you indicated, the people that weren't back in 07, 08, that didn't see that part of the bad part of the short-term debt cycle. They don't realize that, yes, rates are high, and people think, I don't want to buy when rates are high. It's quite the opposite. This is the best time to buy when prices of homes come down. People start panicking. There's job loss. And you're not preying upon people, but it's taking advantage of what the market is giving you. And if you're not aligned with as much capital as possible with a broker or lender that has access to numerous programs available, you are going to miss out at the opportunity that you may only get once or twice in your life as a real estate investor.
So let's talk about that, because again, going back to the forums, a very common question from investors when they're interacting with lenders is, are you a direct lender or are you a broker? And I know you and I have shared the same mindset, is that we do not believe in boxing ourselves in. Do we have direct lending programs? Yes. But we are also some of the biggest brokers in this space. And what that allows us to do is be flexible and cater to the client. Because of what you're saying, we're invested in them. If you have a wholesale deal, there's a very specific transaction or loan product for that type of a deal. If you're looking to do short-term rentals, there's a very specific channel to use for short-term rentals. So let's talk about I don't want to say pros and cons of direct lending versus brokering, but going back to the example that you gave with one of the largest lenders in our space, looking like they're closing up shop, if all of your eggs were in that basket, now you're struggling to go out and find a relationship with another lender in a 30-minute phone call in which you've never worked with them before. Sure, they'll take that phone call, but when you need an exception or when something's not going your way, you don't have a real relationship with them. So what people are doing with us, whether it's our direct program or us brokering, is they're leveraging our relationships. So just talk about that, because we work with a handful of banks, and sometimes we have to place a loan with another bank because it might be better than what we're offering in-house. But they're able to leverage our relationship because we've done hundreds, if not multiple hundreds of loans with that one specific channel.
Yeah, I think when I think of people's debate of I don't want to deal with brokers versus I want to deal with a lender, is the mindset is it's going to cost me more is probably the biggest one.
And talk about the misconception with it costing more.
And I'll get into that. And the other one is I'm going to have less control of the process. The broker has less control of the process. So let's get into both of those. On the cost, brokers are given reduced pricing from lenders to make their money. So basically, if a lender has to acquire a client, there's a client acquisition cost. So if that client is coming via a broker, they can pass that savings along to the broker so the broker can make money. Are there brokers out there that charge exorbitant fees? Absolutely. But we're not in the game of gouging you. Like I said, this is a lifetime value. I don't see you as a key performance indicator where I'm going to make X on this person. I see this person as I'm going to make X over the lifetime of my relationship with this person. So I think there's a misconception of the cost of dealing with that individual. And then the control process. This is an example I just gave on the Zoom meeting we did. If you are doing a loan, and let's say your average loan amount's $200,000, just we'll make up a number, which is not too far off, maybe $250,000 average for us. If that bank is doing $3 billion a year, and maybe they're doing $1 billion a year, if something goes sideways on your deal, do you think they really care about your $250,000 loan?
No.
No, they don't. They just don't. But will they care if you're coming through a broker and there's a problem with your $250,000 loan, but that $250,000 loan is a package of tens of millions of dollars of loans coming through the same broker? I bet they do, and I know they do.
Exactly.
Because if they're not catering to all of my clients, I can take my business elsewhere. So I can leverage my volume to get clients exceptions. And in turn, if you're calling lenders, and I know this to be true, and anybody that's watching or listening to this, I encourage you to call 20 lenders. Tell me how many pick up the phone, right? Not many.
Not many.
Not many. I hear it all the time. So the fact of the matter is I'm always picking up the phone. I'm always communicating. Everybody within CapSource communicates, get back same day or within a reasonable time frame. And I think what we have an advantage of is you and I form relationships not with, again, the entry-level position that person I'm speaking to when I pick up the phone and ask about rates and terms. I'm dealing with somebody far higher up on the food chain, quite often executive at the firm. So I can leverage that relationship to then further get exceptions for my clients, because at the end of the day, it goes back to saying not every deal is going to fit underwriting guidelines. Exceptions need to be made. I can give it 1,000 examples of them. Some we're dealing with at the moment that we've gotten exceptions because the bank wants to earn my business, not the single one-off fix and flipper.
Right. And when things do go sideways, I always lob the question up, who's going to be able to pivot that deal quicker and make sure that you can meet your closing deadline? If you have 4 or 5 weeks to close and you wasted 2 weeks and all of a sudden the lender pauses financing, which we did see with COVID, not everybody turned the lights off,
sure,
but a lot of them did. Who's going to be quicker to then pivot that loan with now a condensed time frame to get it to the closing table? Well, I'm assuming it's going to be the broker, because they also know the underwriting guidelines of every other lender if they're good. We know that not all brokers or even lenders are made the same, right? So I think asking the right questions during the interview process of whomever you're going to work with is important, but I think the lender is going to be able to be a little bit more flexible and able to pivot and make sure that you're not losing that earnest money deposit.
Yeah, and they don't have, that lender doesn't have experience with other lenders. And so you, as I know, we've dealt with 10, 50 different
no
banks.
clue what the competition's doing.
We get asked all the time, what is this other competitor doing? And I say this not coming from a stance of arrogance, but there's just an abundance of idiocy or incompetence within the industry. So it's my job to combat against that, protect my borrowers from that. And you're absolutely right. Things come up. Things happen. Lenders change rates. They reduce LTVs. And last minute you're blindsided, and now you're saying I have to come up with another 20 grand to get this closed. Well, or you can try to seek an option somewhere else, but you have to understand, okay, if I move this somewhere else, is it really going to get closed over there? Do I know all the guidelines? As a broker, I do. I can confidently tell you, hey, this is the issue. We can either solve it and stay the course where we're at. This is what we have to do if we're going to stay the course. If not, here's option B and C, which you will absolutely get closed, and they're absolutely good alternate options. So 100%, that relationship is very important. And that's why I encourage everybody, while I wish everybody would work with CapSource, it's to have as many options as available, because at the end of the day, you're going to need them at some point in time in your real estate investing career.
And every lender specializes in something different.
100%.
Maybe 90% of what they offer might overlap with other lenders, but typically each lender has, a specialty, or, they know what their bread and butter is. So, you're not going to have enough time in the day to vet everybody, get the right person on the phone, which is another thing. We've noticed that there's a massive lack of talent in this space, and there's a lot of lenders kind of trading pieces.
Yep.
So I can't tell you how many banks in the last couple of months that you and I have spoken to, and the loan officer that we've got on the phone's been there less than 12 months. You and I know what underwriting guidelines look. It could be, a couple hundred pages worth of information.
For one program.
Somebody that's been there for 6, 7, 8, or even 12 months is not going to know all of those guidelines. So then what do? They have to ask the underwriter. What does that cause? A delay. So if the person that you're talking to can't immediately answer your questions, and maybe they can't answer all of them, I get that. They should be able to answer the bulk of them. But if they're now relying on somebody else within their company to get you an answer, it's ultimately slowing down the process. So, it goes back to, knowledge is power as well. Rocket ships equal, partnerships equal rocket ships, but you need to be flexible. You need to be agile, because almost no loan goes from beginning to end perfect.
Yeah, and a lot of people gain their knowledge of real estate investing from people that aren't in the financial space. Maybe they're well-known wholesalers or well-known real estate investors that sell courses. I haven't come across one that knows how hard money operates truly in depth across the industry. So you have to, like you indicated, like even if that gentleman that was at the lender had been there a year and he knows 90% of the guidelines, we operate in the 10%.
Right.
We know the little nuances that can cause an issue, and the nuances, how they change from lender to lender. Like you said, they overlap about 90% or whatever that case is, the percentage is. But I know the 10% that changes things. And I'll give you a perfect example. One of the biggest strategies everybody utilizes is BRRRR. So buy, rehab,
rent, refinance, a couple more R's at the end.
Yeah, and repeat until you type it all out.
Right.
But the lenders will tell you, they don't tell you the entirety of how that needs to look. Everybody preaches, go out and BRRRR, you'll buy a property, get your money back, and do it again. It's not that easy. And it's far more difficult when interest rates are climbing. So if that lender doesn't take the time to explain that you need to buy that property deeply discounted on the front end to actually access all your capital, you're going to get into that project and realize at the end of it, I have to sell it because I'm not going to get my money back out.
Right.
Now you're changing your business strategy 6 months in, and maybe you're paying capital gains because you didn't set up a 1031 or any. It's just a chain reaction of bad events. Whereas when I'm talking to somebody, I coach them, hey, you don't make money in real estate when you sell the property. You don't make it when you collect a rental check. You make it when you buy the property.
100%.
So when you're doing the BRRRR strategy, did your lender tell you that your max cash out is 75% loan to value of the after repaired value? Did they also tell you you may have to season it for 6 months before you can access that capital? Did they go into the depth of all of that? And quite often they don't. They just want to get the loan, or they're desperate for the business. I'm not desperate for the business. I'm desperate for you to understand how this business works so you can be successful. I'm desperate for successful investors, professional investors, and for people that truly want to listen to what the truth of what's out there, what the industry really looks like, and have an understanding of not only the microeconomics of their specific deal, but the macroeconomics of the industry. When we see banks shift or pause lending, I immediately pick up the phone and talk to my largest investors saying, heads up, you might need to change your business. You might need to be cognizant of this. Hey, that deal you bought to purchase and BRRRR, you better underwrite the long-term financing at 7-8% now instead of the 5.5% that you did originally. So there's a multitude of issues with that. And with the BRRRR strategy is fantastic and it works, but you have to know how to work it.
You have to underwrite the refinance at the time of the purchase, because there's a lot to unpack there, and I want to dive into it. So we, at the very beginning, discussed the difference between working with a company like CapSource and maybe some of the traditional hard money lenders, and coaching and inventory sourcing were two of the reasons. So kind of going back to the advantage of your coach or mentor also being your finance partner, one thing that we do is we will, number one, figure out what your goals are and what's your business model. Are you somebody that only likes to fix and flip? We know those types of investors. I think the majority of people, because of everything that they digest, whether it be online or in the RIAs, is they want to build a big portfolio. They want passive income. They want to escape the 9 to 5 and be able to enjoy life while there's still, mailbox money coming in. So if you can take 45 minutes to an hour up front to ask these questions with your client, now it gives you and I the ability to go out and find the deal that, number one, we know we want to finance, that's going to get through the underwriting process, and that fits that business model. So if it's a fix and flip, all right, well, let's make sure that it's going to fit the 20% margin rule. And if we're going to refinance it, I know what the actual refinance guidelines and LTVs are, right? So if you're going to sit down with me and we're going to go out and find a property and I know I can ultimately BRRRR it, you're just going to be that much more successful, or you're going to increase your chances for success. So talk about what you would do on a normal basis when you're sourcing inventory for a client.
Yeah, it would just be matched up to what their business model is, like you indicated. When you call us, it's the first question isn't, hey, I got a deal, what's the rates and terms? If that's what you're looking for, I don't think I'm necessarily the lender for you. I want to take a minute, understand what you're doing, because if I just look at a singular transaction, it's not ultimately meeting your overarching goal. Is that single transaction even relevant to your overarching goal? If your goal is to build passive income, is doing that fix and flip leading to that. Now it may be via injecting more capital or you're looking to burr it, but if I don't know that, I ultimately can't give you the best advice possible for what you're doing. So I'm going to ask you what your 1-year plan is, what your 3-year plan is, what is your why? We hear that a lot in mentorship. What is your purpose? And I don't mean is it, it could be I want to make $10 million. But then once you set that goal, I'm going to basically give you the mindset of let's work our way backwards. Let's start with the end in mind. Let's find that goal. And the only way I can figure out how to get to that goal is figure out the goal, then let's figure out the system or processes that gets you to that goal. Then once we have that in place, we can hold you accountable. We can track your success. You can use key performance indicators. You can understand what you should be looking at to be ultimately be successful. And whether or not you meet that goal, you can then look back and say, what part of my process or system didn't meet that goal? Because it's not about the goal.
Right.
It's about whether that process and system is actually going to lead to your goal. And you didn't fail to meet your goal, you failed to actually implement a system or process that would lead to that result. So yeah, it's extremely important for us to take that time to give our consultative services in a way that I'm really truly understanding what you want to do. And it's not to say I wouldn't do a one-off loan for somebody that inherited a property that just wants to get money out of it. That's fine. And we do those things. But ultimately, if you're a real estate investor, or that's your ultimate tagline of who you want to be, then we're going to take the time to dig into that. Then as we start working together, I'm going to reach out. Our team's going to reach out. Hey, are you successful? Do you need to find your next deal? And to your point of, once I know that, I can figure out what is your buy box that meets your goal. Then once we know your buy box that meets your goal, with our network connected with numerous wholesalers and wholesaling ourselves, we can go find that or help you find that or tell you how to find that. What means of acquisition means are out there to find that. So that's what we truly mean when we're more full service and more of a boutique brokerage, if you will, or more tailored than just the guy that's reading off a paper that says, here's what I can do.
And it's definitely more time consuming, but we're holding them accountable. You and I don't get paid unless a loan closes. So too many times we hop on the phone or hop on a Zoom with a brand new investor and it's perfect. They're motivated, they've got money, they went out and set up their LLC, they are networking at the local RIA, but they might take 4, 5, 6, 12 months to go out and find a good deal because it comes back to second guessing. I'm stuck in the research phase. Well, okay, what about this property? You know what, I feel like it's too tight. Let us do that work for you, right? So I found early in my career that I could increase my volume by putting the two together. So I went out and established relationships with some of the local wholesalers, and I would go through all of the inventory and cherry pick the ones that fit their business model. If they're flipping, perfect. We discuss what the profit margin is going to look like. This one fits. Okay, it's a 4-2, 1,200 square feet block home. It's for sure going to pass underwriting. It's not a one-off deal where it's 5 structures on one parcel and one of them's a trailer and the other one's got no roof. I found that I was able to surpass every other loan officer early in my career because I would take the time to, number one, understand what they're trying to accomplish, doing exactly what you did, starting with the end in mind, working our way backwards, getting a good understanding for what their overall ability to handle whatever the scope of work is, and then find that deal. Okay, you have 10 flips under your belt. Okay, I can find something that needs 80, 100 grand worth of work. This is your first deal. Okay, let's find something with some lipstick, cosmetic work, and allow you to get in and out and feel accomplished and have a blueprint for success to move forward. And I think it's one reason why we don't have to do a ton of marketing. Like we don't have a ton of ad spend. A lot of it is word of mouth, and honestly, when you have the deal, you also get the loan with it. So we don't have to sit and wait around. So we'll go out and find that deal. We'll find that asset. We'll find it in the area that you want. And if not, if we can't find it, we'll coach you on what to do. Because the other thing is not every investor is a great salesperson. They're not good at negotiating. So they get stuck. They don't know what to do. So even if it's us just putting this person and that person together, you and I have done that 1,000 times over, where I know there's an investor, he's got 2 projects going on, he picked a third one up. You know, he's maybe not necessarily looking to sell right now, but I know somebody that would pick that asset up, pay him a little bit of a assignment fee, put some cash in his pocket, and then give them that deal to work with. So it's not just coaching, it's not just sourcing inventory, it's the ability to put third parties together. Now, going back to us sourcing the deal and then underwriting it, again, going back to these forums, there's a lot of bad information out there in terms of loan products or strategies. And we were just touching on the BRRRR strategy. I'd love to get your opinion, because I've talked to several people in the last couple of days looking to BRRRR a property. And you know, I'm asking them, okay, well, where are your cash reserves right now? And your business models to build out a portfolio. Have you ever had to switch the mindset of the investor or have them switch their business model? Maybe it's the market that they're operating in and they can't get those properties at a deep enough discount where the BRRRR strategy makes sense. So I've had a lot of clients where it's their first deal and they want to buy a rental, but they've only got 30 grand in the bank. And you take that 30 grand, and if you're lucky to BRRRR it, maybe you're getting 10,000 back out of it, which isn't enough to put down on a down payment for your next deal. So I have to kind of switch the mindset of maybe we have to buy, sell, buy, hold. Or maybe we need to implement, you know, a different income stream. Maybe you need to take up wholesaling, and there's a million advantages by going direct to seller on your own, by you getting deeper discounts, not paying the assignment fees, and then cherry picking the ones that you want to ultimately put into your portfolio. I think so many investors are in a rush to get to the end. And if you're constantly doing that, you're going to miss out on the invaluable experience that you get by rehabbing a property and then quickly exiting it. So how often, and it's kind of a 2-part question, we'll get into how successful you think people are right now using the BRRRR strategy, but how many of your investors would you say, when you sit down on that discovery call to figure out what their business model is or what their goals are, do you have to change that mindset? And I know that you spoke to somebody, and I think you just referenced it, from North Carolina, where the guru was saying not to buy right now because of where interest rates are. So how often is that happening?
Yeah, I just had a conversation with somebody via Bigger Pockets that was looking to buy in our market, Orlando. And their idea was they live in Georgia. They were looking for a rental property by Disney, much like everybody and their brother that wants to operate a short-term rental here. But this was their first transaction, starting with like $50,000 to maybe $70,000. And to your point, you have to have continued ways to inject capital into your business model, especially if your model is just to do, I want to do 1 deal a year. Well, maybe not. Most people that start aren't just well capitalized stepping in here with $100,000 or $500,000. They're starting with a certain set amount of seed money. So
it's not a passion project for most people. They're looking to build a business.
Correct. And for him, you know, he needed advice on doing that. And my mindset is, I asked him, what is the ultimate goal here? Is it to own rentals? Well, if it is, then let's not lock up all your capital in a condo by Disney and then wait to refill the coffers of the money you're going to use to invest. The better approach was, let's stay in your market up in Georgia, get a fix and flip done. This gentleman had a handyman service background, and he can inject more capital into there. And there's other ways to do that, whether it's, like you indicated, flip a house, buy a rental, so you're injecting capital twice, then buying a rental, so you're not locking all the capital up. Maybe it's also wholesaling on the side. Maybe you're also acquiring through creative financing. Maybe you're also acquiring via partnerships, or maybe you're raising private capital. At the end of the day, you have to inject more capital. It cannot just be rental checks at the end of the month or short-term rental checks at the end of the month. That's not going to be the fastest way to scale. And again, to your point, is real estate is not, we live in a society of immediate gratification. Real estate is not a get-rich-quick scheme.
Right.
And everybody that entered over the last few years is delusional to believe it is, because they were at a time where money was the cheapest it was in the history of the United States. It was being printed like it was, you know, left and right, like the machines were not stopping printing money. And they had this mindset that, oh, I could just buy anything and it'll sell. That's not the case in a down cycle. If you weren't part of the down cycle before, you'll learn very quickly what that looks like. And I think people need to have other revenue streams, need to be well versed in raising private capital and or wholesaling or other means that get them that money quickly to scale faster. Because everything we've discussed, like mentorship we do, is to collapse that time. The only thing you have in life is time. If you don't have time, you have none of the other important things like your family, friends, health, so on and so forth. So to collapse that time, you need to be doing all of these things, and you need somebody that knows how to navigate those waters and put it into a way that's clear path for you. So it's very important for us to dig into those things, to change your mindsets. This gentleman locked up a property today. Within a week after I spoke to him, has, as of today, his first fix and flip under contract. And he's going to be able to make money that is going to lead to his next deal, or maybe buy a rental and take the money he had already set aside to continue flipping, which is a vastly better approach than moving out of state, operating in a market he's unaware of, operating in a short-term rental space that has a bunch of other things you need to be aware of, and he's doing something that he actually had experience with. And all he needed to do is hear it from somebody else.
Right. And that's something that CapSource, you, myself, the other people under roof are good at, is looking at your situation and helping you build the assembly line. Because the last thing that you want in any production business is for the assembly line to come to a screeching halt. And I did the same thing. I was speaking to a guy who I found on Bigger Pockets, who was looking for some information on, a project that he had under contract that he wanted to burr. Deposit was already down. It was hard. He's got $5,000 into this deal, whether he likes it or not. And because he got bad information or didn't do the math himself, not only was he not able to burr it and pull cash out, number one, didn't know that there was seasoning requirements, and we can get into that, but two, when you do the math, he's bringing cash to the table. So it comes down to what we were talking about before, being able to underwrite the deal ahead of time. And if we're sourcing the inventory, we're doing that math. Okay, not just, okay, here are the numbers to acquire the deal, but are we going to be able to pull cash out? Do you have enough cash in place where we can wait the seasoning period and you can still go out and find other deals? Are you going to get a portion of that money back? Are you getting all of that money back? And I'm finding it, very difficult unless it's really the wholesalers that are bringing us deals that are able to burr their properties because of how good they are at negotiating the point of sale with the homeowner versus somebody who's buying from a wholesaler, or like this kid did and was buying off MLS. If you're buying off of MLS right now, I can almost guarantee you're not going to be able to burr the property. And we're seeing, number one, seasoning periods for cash out refinances increasing. So we went to a point where there was no seasoning, and then there was 3 months of seasoning. Now we're at 6 months of seasoning to be able to pull the cash out. So do you really want to wait 6 months to take your next project on when you're waiting to pull the cash out? Or do you have an assembly line like we're talking about to keep everything moving? I think that there's a lot of increase in competition, and I think we can debate where that competition's coming from. Social media is a big part of it. You have figureheads like Pace Morby with a huge following, where now a much younger generation is getting into real estate. We see it on the forums all the time. Hey, I'm in college, I'm in high school, I'm looking to flip my first deal. I think COVID had a lot to do with that. A lot of people said, hey, the heck with it, I'm done working a 9 to 5, I'm done working for the man, I'm going to go and create my own business. And real estate naturally is an easy way for people to get in. There's no education requirements. Really, you just need cash and a network. So we can debate on where the competition is coming from. And I agree with you that we're going to start to see deeper discounted properties, but in a lot of markets, there's still a massive shortage of inventory. So the point being is, when you have more competition and you have less inventory, and we can talk about why there's less inventory. I know that if I'm a homeowner, I'm not wanting to trade my 2 or 3% interest rate for a 7% interest rate, so I'm going to weather the storm. Whereas 6 months ago, 7 months ago, I might be compelled to sell because of what you were getting for that property, and then I could get into something with a decent interest rate. So increased competition is causing investors to overpay. We see it even right now with the market the way it is. I had a wholesale deal that was brought to us, shot it out to our investors, and you know what? Somebody paid $20K over that asking price. the flip margins don't work, and you sure as hell aren't going to be able to pull your cash out at the time of refinancing. So I know we can't talk on every market, but going back to the difficulties of burring or making sure that your strategy is buying as deeply discounted as you can, the interest rates historically are still low, but they're not where they were a year or two ago. So, there's trade-off, right? Yeah. And I think increased competition is going to make it difficult for people to burr the property.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, listen, as the last couple of years, as home values have gone up, so will taxes, right? And when we're looking at debt service coverage ratio loans, which you burr into, which is essentially the total monthly payment versus what you're able to rent it for. So if your payment's $1,000, you need to minimally rent it for $1,000 for the most part to qualify. So as we get into calculating that, we're looking at the principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and association dues. So if I'm looking at all of that, and let's say your HOA is upping its cost because inflation, your taxes are increasing because your property value went up, the rates are increasing because the Fed is increasing the rate. And your lender should know where that's going in 6 months from now, like we do as well. So having a background of knowing what the rate's going to look like. And when insurance goes up, like the state of Florida getting hit with hurricanes,
through the roof.
You have roofers that are litigious and suing or teaching people how to sue their insurance carriers to get free roofs. While all those costs rise and we have inflation at 8%, that makes it infinitely more difficult for that ratio of 1-to-1 to work. And if the average salaries aren't increasing in line with inflation, which they never do, it's due to corporate greed, you're just never going to have renters able to pay to meet those thresholds in every market. So making burr, it makes burr just an infinitely more difficult strategy. It doesn't mean it's not possible, but again, it goes back to you have to either know how to source deeply discounted deals, you either need to know how to negotiate to get deeply discounted deals, or you need to be in the room with the right people that can get them to you.
So to kind of break it down for people that are watching, so you're talking about the DSCR ratio to qualify for long-term financing.
Correct.
And because of all the reasons that you just outlined, it's making that ratio tougher to qualify for. So what they're having to do is then lower that loan to value, which is making it more difficult to access the cash out. So now it's a matter of how do I make the debt service numbers work and still get my money back out? And before the rates really went through the roof, there were some options, not a lot, but there were some options in select states to get 80% cash out. Mm-hmm. I think we could both agree that there's nobody doing that right now. And if somebody's telling you, then they're not connected to the secondary market, or they don't really have a capital markets division within their company. They're kind of going off of secondhand information. So I think it's making it difficult from that standpoint as well.
Yeah, it's everything is sort of not working in burr's favor. Now, when we see prices come back down a little bit, it'll help because the prices are less, therefore your loan to value is less. But that's extremely important. And here's another thing: as you're dealing with your lender, especially if your intention is to burr, is to have a very solid understanding of the DSCR product they offer. You might have a good understanding of the fix and flip because you got into that and you're rehabbed and done. But when it comes to the DSCR aspect, I coach people to tell them, number one, I would ask them what that lender's rate lock policy is. Meaning if they're going to send you a quote, and let's say it says 7% 30-year fixed rate, is that going to be the rate once that appraisal's back and when I'm at the closing table? And quite often, if they're not locking your rate in that first week when they pull your credit, do the background check, the initial underwriting, well, that rate is floating until the appraisal comes back, which is the general way other companies do it. So they'll float the rate until the appraisal's back and maybe lock it for 2 weeks after that appraisal's back. That's concerning.
Yeah.
If we have rate changes or banks like we saw just close, that rate can jump drastically. Quite literally, the bank we're referencing went from 7-8% range to 10 plus. So that's not going to make you DSCR any better. It's going to kill your deal. It absolutely is. So asking that lender, what is your rate lock policy? And not just hearing it verbally from them. Get it in writing. Because, somebody can tell you anything on the phone just to get you in the door and pitch you. But this is still private hard money, and they can do what they want. they can change that rate. This is not a government loan that they're beholden to a certain set of guidelines. So just be cognizant that your rate may change, and you want to know that it's locked, and the lock period should be 45 days. And another question is, what is that debt service coverage ratio that you use? Is it a 1-to-1? Is it a 1.2, meaning I have to rent it for $1,200 if my payment's $1,000? What does that look like? Some lenders will take 10% off of your rental income, your gross monthly rental income, to capital expenditure. Basically, they're looking at like possibility of vacancy and other things. So now that's making that ratio more difficult. And again, that's happening all over the place. When these rates shifted, everybody that was in a bridge to permanent financing, meaning a BRRRR strategy, was underwriting a deal at 3-4% on the long-term financing, or 4s or 5s. When that all shifted, they said, oh, now it's 6-7%. That changes everything drastically. So making sure your lender really is giving you everything up front to ensure nothing's going to change from day one. Now, values change, appraisals may change things, or you may say your insurance is higher than you estimated, or taxes are higher because you're losing an exemption, or whatever it is. Things can change, but you need to mitigate that change as much as possible up front.
Right, and then again, going back to partnering with your capital partner, you can get out ahead of a lot of the changes, and the changes are almost daily. We know of lenders that will look at your credit score, but also have proprietary credit scoring systems. Proprietary to the point where you and I can't even intelligently explain it to people. So looking at credit card utilization, credit history, where in our space that never existed before. We've seen credit requirements go up. That's a big misconception for especially DSCR loans is, Mark, do I need a credit score? Can I qualify with 500 credit? We know that that's not the case. A new one that we've ran into is mortgage verifications, making sure that on your primary residence or the subject property that there's no lates. These are also underwriting guidelines that weren't around, maybe 12 months ago or longer. So it's not like they introduced these loan programs, Wall Street introduced these loan programs to lenders across the country and said, these are the guidelines and they're going to stay that way. So it kind of goes back to being able to get out ahead of the issues or the speed bumps and knowing where this loan could get stuck, or asking the right questions before you get too far into the process, or even putting your earnest money deposits down. There's a lot of people that we need to push away right from the very beginning because maybe they don't own their primary and they do want to build out their rental portfolio. Maybe they were in forbearance and they haven't made a couple of months of payments yet. So there's a lot of what we call landmine questions up front that prevents both the lender, the loan officer, and the investor from wasting time and money that you and I both know a lot of lenders don't ask. They don't care. They want to get you in and get it to the point where it's too hard for you to walk away. And to me, which is very odd, it seems like they don't care about the experience. They're more of a volume play versus repeat business. And I think you and I both agree that repeat business is the easiest business. We're not in, the offices of CapSource carpet bombing. We're finding select people that are willing to listen, to be coached. And it's weird how you take somebody who's never done a deal before, and sometimes they're infinitely more successful than the guy that's got 50 flips under his belt. The guy that's got 50 flips under his belt, might come across as, hey, I know what I'm doing more than you do. I don't have, 50 rental properties right now, but I've financed thousands of deals from beginning to end. I've seen the good ones, the bad ones, and everything in between. But I like taking that rookie investor, taking the extra hour to coach them and go through these landmine questions and making sure that that first one goes off without a hitch. And then they're going to ultimately come back. And you and I have both seen it. I have, at least a dozen case examples right off the top of my head where I could say this guy came to me having never done a deal before and now owns a massive portfolio. I have guys that have gone from 0 deals to now owning their own brokerage and construction company to the point where they were able to graduate from CapSource and say, I don't need you anymore. And that is a great day. Why? Sure, I might not get your business moving forward, but I got plenty of business leading up to this point. And then the referrals after that, you can't put a value on that.
And there's also now an operator in the space that's professional, ethical, and is painting a better picture of overall real estate investing. There's a ton of unethical people, and we've dealt with a myriad of things of fraud, from attorneys to title companies miswiring funds left and right. It happens. So 100%. We have a big mindset of we like to coach new investors. I want to make sure you're starting off on the right foot. Bad habits are hard to break. If somebody's entitled and thinks they want the cheapest financing and they deserve it because they're a big level operator, great. I'm not the person you need to be working with. It sounds like you already know it all. And like you said, we don't know everything, and I don't purport to, but what I know is financing in this space. And if I can impart that upon you and you have the time to actually listen, digest it, internalize it, then externalize it by creating a company where it manifests itself into a massive portfolio, you're going to be far better and far more successful. Education doesn't stop when you left college or high school or wherever. It's a continued thing until you die. So it's like listening to every podcast in the morning, getting into a routine, becoming disciplined. Being disciplined and having somebody there, whether it's us as your capital partner and coach, to hold you accountable. We hold each other accountable. It's easy to get whiplash and off the course. It's infinitely easier to get back on that course when you have somebody that's able to set you back on track.
Right.
So yeah, it's just be a sponge. Everybody has something to tell you. Listen more than you talk. That's something that people don't do. That's why we have that beginning call. I want to hear what you're saying. I don't want to tell you what to do. I want to hear what you're saying, then give you guidance on what you should do.
Get into the rooms with people that are already doing what you want to do. They're in the positions that you want to be in. Take as much information as you can, soak it up, and then do what most people don't do and take action on it. And you would be surprised how when you can condense time or skip to the front of the line, and you and I are firsthand examples of that, and where our business has gone from last year to this year in a down market. We've more than doubled production. But we also said, you know what, it's about time that we now pay to skip the line. Let's pay for the network. That's essentially what you're paying for. Sometimes it's not so much the course or the content within the course that you're paying for. Maybe with a one-off mentor it might be, but for a group or a mastermind, it's the people in that group. So the thing that I love is that we have a Slack channel that if I have a question or I have a deal in another state or I'm looking for a contractor here or a good title company or an attorney, I can now reach out to the network. In my opinion, I can't put a value on that. No. There is no value that I could say this is what that is worth. In fact, I think it's probably undervalued in terms of what you're paying to get into it. And I think we're both excited in not the idea of spending more money, but how can I spend more money and then get 10x back? And we know people that have gone from paying $100 at the RIA to 40 grand to get into a mastermind to now paying another 50 grand for a mastermind, and the next thing you know, they're paying well into six figures just on education. And I know that not everybody, especially people that we're talking to, are in a position to do that, but it just starts with one thing. And I think if there's anything to take from this, it's start with the RIA. Take all of the free content that you can get online, but actually get into a room. They have a guest speaker every month that's going to specialize in one subject. As we discussed before, all of your third parties are in there, but get in there and actually network, shake hands, take the time to talk to people. Don't be the guy that shows up every month, eats a brownie and a soda, and you never speak to them. And we both know those people. Yeah. So I think if there's anything to take away from this, it's to reiterate that partnerships equal rocket ships, knowledge is power, and your local RIAs, your local meetups are a great, inexpensive way to get your foot in the door, but it's going to be up to you to ultimately take action on it. The second thing I would take away is when it comes to coaching or mentoring is to make sure that you do your due diligence up front and that you're not spending a ton of money on somebody that's not vested in you. There's plenty of good mentors out there that are worth paying a lot of money for. But you need somebody that's going to be invested in you and hold you accountable. And in my opinion, and I could have 100 comments after this telling me that I'm wrong, and not every lender or bank or finance partner will do this, but if you have the opportunity to get your coaching or mentoring from the bank, I almost think you can't put a price tag on that. And if they're going to do some of the additional things like, source inventory for you, pre-underwrite your deals, help you do the math, I think you're going to set yourself up on a fast track for success with less issues. There's always going to be something that pops up throughout the course of your investing career or any one-off loan, but I think you're going to be able to remove 85, 90% of those problems. And then if you do have questions, or if somebody's feeding you something, whether it be, like we heard in the one of the forums that hard money lenders don't offer DSCR programs, that's not somebody I want to take advice from.
Yeah.
Or, hey, yeah, the burst strategy is the greatest strategy to use in real estate investing. Okay, sure, but are you doing the math correctly? Are you putting $5,000 down on that property that you found off of MLS, having no idea what the max loan to value is on the back end? So I think, again, going back to networking, coaching, if you can bring it all under one roof, great. If not, make sure that you're going through the proper vetting process, asking the right questions up front to make sure that you're not paying money and ultimately throwing it out the window. And if your lender, if it's not for coaching or mentoring and they're telling you that you need to pay money up front, I would personally go the opposite way. And we both know of a lot of brokers or lenders that say, I want $3,000 or $4,000 up front, and I can almost guarantee you that deal's not going to make it to the finish line.
Yeah, we should all be incentivized to get to the closing table. Like you said, we get paid when the loan closes. You get your deal when the loan closes. The seller gets paid when the loan closes. The seller's agent, the real estate agent, the insurance company, we all have the same incentive. Let's all work together. Let's build that team out. It's great if you work with a company like ours that can offer a myriad of things, but there's other resources. They're in your backyard. The entry barrier to access them is very cheap, like you indicated, a couple $100 for a year. So utilize it. Be disciplined. And before you get started even attending your RIA, and I would truly try to map out what that goal is, then attend that RIA, then fine-tune that goal. That first iteration of the goal is not the last iteration, and build that process out. And I encourage everybody, pick up the phone and talk to as many lenders, brokers as you possibly can, talk to as many individuals as you can to be successful, because being disciplined, being open, and truly being resourceful is going to lead to being profitable in this industry.
And hold yourself accountable. Like you're saying, when it comes to mapping out the goals, I think everybody's a little different in terms of what the process of mapping out is. I think for you and I, we both agree that it's writing it down. We both have planners on our desk. It has our goals from January 1 in the front of that folder. Every day when I come in, I can look at it and see, okay, this month, how many of my goals was I able to check off the list? And hold yourself accountable. It's a lot easier to have somebody else, but at the end of the day, you need to hold yourself accountable. So if somebody's watching this, they're a new investor, experienced investor, they're doing residential fix and flips, they're doing commercial deals, new construction, how do they find you?
Yeah, they can find us on Instagram at CapSource CFO, CapSource CEO, thecapsource.com, Mark at thecapsource.com, John at thecapsource.com. Pick up the phone, call us, quick Google search. There's a million ways to find us. If they're local to Florida or North Carolina, you can meet us face-to-face at events, join the Zooms. And please, to anybody that's listening, take 15 minutes of my time. 15 minutes. You're never bugging myself or anybody on our staff. I assure you that at least we'll give you a bit of clarity or help you map that out, whether you use our business or not, to help you expand or get started in real estate investing. I think it's worth the conversation because everybody in this industry is worth talking to.
100%. Take the 15, 20 minutes to figure out what your goals are, what's your business model, start from the end. Let's work our way back. And even after that point, if you want to go out, shop around, and see if other lenders will give you the same type of attention, and not just attention, but attention to detail, if you find that, great. As you said before, I think everybody, especially right now in our current climate, should be aligning themselves with as many capital partners as they can. We run a financing business and we still raise capital. We're never stopping that.
No.
So I don't think it's you work with CapSource and you work with CapSource only, right? I think you need to find private lenders. I think you need to be well versed in creative finance. In fact, if I'm not here to shoot our own business in the foot, I would start with creative financing options first. Then use hard money or private money as a backup option. So all of the above. So again, at CapSource CEO
At CapSource CFO.
www.thecapsource.com. I believe you're taking clients for coaching right now. I'm doing the same. If not, we can at least price out a deal, go over the discovery call, lay out your business plan, and hopefully get people on the fast track. Even in this current climate, even where interest rates are right now, you can still make plenty of money. It's just a matter of doing the math correctly, and making sure that you have not just a single backup plan, but multiple backup options. Don't go into the deal with the mindset of this is what I'm going to do. You need to be able to pivot. The saying that we heard all the time is when people zig, I zag. Well, if everybody's telling you to stay out, this is the time for you to get in. And if you're already in the business, double down on your marketing. If you're trying to go direct to seller, don't stop right now, because you and I both know that everybody else is. There's plenty of wholesalers that are laying off staff. They're taking in-house reps and moving them to virtual assistants. And they might have to do it out of necessity, but if you don't have that type of overhead, then double down. Triple down on what you're doing and take advantage of everybody else moving out, because it is going to correct itself. It is going to get back to normal, and you don't want to be on the outside looking in. You don't want to be the guy who, and we both know plenty of people in 2008, 2009 that would be in unbelievable positions if they didn't stop buying.
Exactly.
Or if they held on to it. So this rut that we're in right now is not going to be around forever. You and I both know that. And if you need to get creative, then get creative. You know, you and I both just bought a rental property out in Ocala. And if I told you 2 years ago, Mark, let's buy a rental property on an adjustable mortgage, you would probably say, no, you're crazy. But you need to be able to get creative. We know that that's going to be a great area in a couple of years. So how did we get creative? Not only did we go with an adjustable mortgage, we went with an interest-only mortgage. We're maximizing cash flow right now when rates are sky high, with the intentions of refinancing down the line. And because we went with an ARM, we got a lower interest rate, we have a lower loan to value, we're going to be able to cash it out and put it towards another deal. And then at that point, once we feel like the market's a little bit more stable, we can put it into more of a fixed option and lower the principal. So there's a multitude of options out there, even on the rental side. It doesn't have to be a 30-year fixed. Let's figure out a way to make the deal work now. Let's get creative. We'll go over the pros and cons of all of those options. And then ultimately, with our input, leave it up to you to make the decision that's right for your business. And that's all you can do.
Yep.
Was that all right?
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if you remember, I said, is this going to be a podcast? And you're like, no.
What, did it seem like that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's all right.